Brexit. What happens next? Theresa May decided yesterday to defer the vote on her deal to an unknown later date.
We will therefore defer the vote scheduled for tomorrow.
But it will have to be before January the 21st next year. It became clear that because the EU said we could revoke Article 50, that those MPs who want to remain in the European Union could stop a no deal happening and simply cancel Brexit if they wanted to.
If you want to remain part of the single market and the customs union, be open that this would require free movement, rule-taking across the economy, and ongoing financial contributions, none of which are, in my view, compatible with the result of the referendum.
This takes away the economic risks of voting down May's deal and automatically deferring to a no deal, because automatically deferring to a no deal is no longer the case, as Parliament could now vote to remain if they wanted to. Therefore, the threat made by government that May's deal would be better than the alternative no longer applied, as all economic forecasts have shown leaving is worse than remaining. The EU essentially reassured every MP who doesn't like May's deal but is anxious about a no deal by saying you don't have to pull a no deal, you can remain. But May also deferred the vote because she knew it would have gotten voted down for many different reasons. If it was voted down, she might have lost confidence in MPs and therefore lost her job as Prime Minister. This would have created even more uncertainty for the UK than we have now. Also, a failure to deliver Brexit would likely obliterate the Tory party at the next election.
If you want to leave without a deal, be upfront that in the short term this would cause significant economic damage to parts of our country who can least afford to bear the burden.
So she's bought some more time to change those aspects of the deal MPs don't like, to win more votes and get a deal so the UK can leave the EU and deliver on the EU referendum in 2016, and therefore create the political certainty needed. The Irish Backstop is one aspect of the deal MPs are most prominently against.
We had hoped that the changes we've secured to the backstop would reassure members that we could never be trapped in it indefinitely. I hope the House will forgive me if I take a moment to remind it of those changes. The customs element of the backstop is now UK-wide. It no longer splits our country into two customs territories. This also means that the backstop is now an uncomfortable arrangement for the EU, so they won't want it to come into use or persist for long if it does. Both sides are now legally committed to using best endeavours to have our new relationship in place before the end of the implementation period, ensuring the backstop is never used. If our new relationship isn't ready, we can now choose to extend the implementation period, further reducing the likelihood of the backstop coming into use. If the backstop ever does come into use, we now don't have to get the new relationship in place to get out of it. Alternative arrangements that make use of technology could be put in place instead. The treaty is now clear that the backstop can only ever be temporary, and there is now a termination clause.
The Irish Backstop is a problem for the UK because if our negotiations on the future trade deal with the EU don't go to plan, and we don't have a trade deal by March 2021, then we default to it, unless we extend the transition period, which could be extended up until the end of the century and is decided by a joint committee. So either we make a trade deal with the EU, or we default to the Irish Backstop, or we keep paying into the EU and being under ECJ law and in the single market and in the customs union until 2099 under the transition period. Under the Irish Backstop, Northern Ireland will be subject to different rules and regulations than the rest of the UK, so that it can have an open land border with the Republic of Ireland, which it needs to keep peace in Northern Ireland after the Troubles as set out in the Good Friday Agreement. This means checks in the Irish Sea. The rest of the UK would also be subject to customs union rules made by the European Court of Justice, rules we wouldn't have a say in making. We wouldn't be able to make trade deals with nations outside of the customs union, and we wouldn't be able to leave it until an independent panel agrees the solution to avoiding a hard border has been reached. This could continue indefinitely, as the UK would not have a unilateral right to bring the backstop to an end. So without opening up all the other things wrong with the deal, such as the non-legally binding future trade deal, Theresa May has to go back to Brussels and try and change the Irish backstop. Now the EU has said this deal is final, but they are holding an emergency summit on Thursday to try and see how they can change the wording and ensure the backstop is at least temporary and easier to get out of. Now, if she manages to get those changes, there's no guarantee MPs will vote in favour of the deal, as more than likely they won't solely be voting on just the backstop itself. There are other things wrong with the deal. Many MPs want to remain or want a second referendum or even want a no deal depending on their party alliances. But May has promised more parliamentary involvement, as she has to both find a deal to enact the referendum in 2016 but also avoid political chaos and the risk with remaining. No deal is no longer an option that Parliament will agree to if they can remain, even if it's just temporarily. So the only way to leave is with a deal. But to get the entirety of Parliament to agree an entire Brexit deal is going to take years of debate to come. But do you agree with me? Join in the debate below and subscribe.